Welcome to What the Force, and this is our segment, What the Fandom. And today we are exploring webcomics with the fabulous creators and contributors of Darths and Droids comics, which have been around for 11 plus years now. With me is David Morgan-Marr and Andrew Shelshear. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, David and Andrew, can you tell me how this whole thing got started in your own words?
Okay, well, I should probably start with this one since it was my idea initially, kind of. So back in the day, there was a webcomic by somebody else. I forget his name, actually. I should have prepared, called DM of the Rings, in which he took the Lord of the Rings films and decided to see what Lord of the Rings would look like if it was actually a role-playing game. Just with sort of guys playing Dungeons and Dragons. And as he pointed out in his comic, it doesn't really suit a Dungeons and Dragons set of players because they would go off the rails and do something completely different to what the films actually did. And he made this hilarious comic, and it lasted through the 3 films of the Lord of the Rings series. There was 150 strips altogether, and lots of people loved it, and it was hilarious. And then it finished, and he actually said at the end of that, I'm surprised nobody else has started doing a similar one with some other movie. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, oh, we should do that. And it's easy to have ideas to do these sorts of things. So I went to work, and Andrew and a bunch of our friends hung around and played board games at lunch. And I said, hey, guys, DM of the Rings just finished. And they were like, yeah, that's so sad. And I said, we should start our own one with Star Wars. And they were like, that's a lot of work.
I was like, yes, let's do it immediately.
Yeah,
we started writing it on the spot. So he walked in and said, it's just finished. And I knew because we'd all been reading it. It was Seamus Young.
Seamus Young, that's it, yes.
Yeah. And we were big fans and loved the strip. And we'd sort of been talking about it and stuff. So, he came in and it was like, it's finished. And I was like, yeah, I know, bummer. And then he pointed out the thing he'd written about was in the comments thread saying, and people were asking him, what one are you going to do next? And he's saying, man, I am so over this, but I'm sure someone else can pick it up. And so when DMM came in, I was already sort of primed for thinking about it, but it never really occurred to me. So DMM is, sorry, we'll call David DMM. we call it, yeah, that's just his name. So DMM was all, we should do this. And I was like, well, so DMM has been doing a regular webcomic for, I don't know, had you been doing it for about 10 years at that point? A long time. It was ages. And so when DMM actually joined our work, I already knew him because I'd seen him on from a regular webcomic. Mm-hmm. And so mildly interesting story from that is I'd been reading a regular webcomic, just binging on it. And then I went to the work office kind of cake thing, and they were introducing this new guy, David, and I looked at him and went, holy smokes, that's the guy. I would recognize those eyebrows anywhere. And I ran over to my desk and just checked, and because he's got pictures of himself in him, so he pretends to be a DM and sort of does comics and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I just looked through it and went, yes, that's actually him. This is unbelievable. Because I just assumed he was from Canada or America or somewhere, and then suddenly here he is in the same room with me. Oh,
maybe we should mention where you guys are from. I don't know if people can tell by your accent.
It's not totally obvious, but we're from Australia.
Yeah, g'day.
Yeah, we can put on a bit more of an Aussie accent for you if you want, but, whatever.
I don't know. I've got a lot of American listeners. They might not understand it.
Not even it down. Yeah. So yes, we live in Sydney. We worked for, David still works for, and I used to work at a company called Cisra. Mm-hmm. And we would meet in lunchtimes and play board games. And so we had a huge binge of Settlers of Catan, back when Settlers of Catan was brand spanking new. And, new in Australia anyway. And then we went from that to doing Formula Dare and doing Carcassonne and just running hundreds of different kind of games, and we did tournaments. We discovered that there were mutual Magic the Gathering fans, and so we were nuts into Magic the Gathering. Still are. We just did a tournament a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, Unstable.
The Unstable one. It was awesome. I came second to Stephen again. So yeah, we'd been board gaming together, and so it's a group of about 8 of us, usually 6 to 8 of us. Would get together and do stuff. And DMM had his long-running webcomic. So when he said, "I want to do this," I like to be the strong second and just go, "Yes, we have to do this. Let's do it. Let's do it now."
Everyone needs a supportive friend.
Yeah. So we sat down and immediately wrote the first strip. And then DMM workshopped it up and we just published it. I think we actually decided, no, we'll have a buffer of 3 strips because DMM's really good at having a buffer of saying we are not going to publish until we have this many strips in the bank, and then we will never miss an update. So
right.
But
3 strips is only a week for you.
Yeah. Well, we built it up. So we built it up to an average of 12 after a while, but we didn't actually start on the 3 times a week schedule until about a month in, when we realized we were making them faster than because the material's right there, and it was pretty easy. It's interesting seeing the evolution of the strips. When looking at the first ones, we really didn't have much of a difference between the 2 characters, and there was much more of so Seamus Young's characters were sort of famously adversarial and sort of hated each other, and we at first our ones, the characters were much more adversarial, even though we sort of had the mission statement of, all right, this is going to be a group who gets along because they're going to be doing it for a long time.
It's a collaborative role-playing game setting, but they still end up I don't know, wheedling each other a little bit, especially Pete, who is just I don't know how to explain Pete. Pete is wonderful. Yeah, I know. Like Munchkin incarnate.
Yeah. So we started, sorry if I could pick up. We started with the idea that it would be a bit different to the DM of the Rings, in which, as Andrew said, the players basically hate each other's guts and they get together in extremis. We wanted a group who were a group of genuine friends, and after a while of playing the game together, they'd want to get together every week and play the game and have fun, and they needle each other a bit, but it's in a good-natured sort of way. But in order to get there, we had to show them sort of getting together, and Pete originally is kind of the min-maxer. He doesn't like girls playing the game, so he's against Sally being there, but he matures over the time, and before too long they get to the point where they're actually a really good group of friends, and that they might jokingly needle each other and say they hate each other's guts or something, but it's all in good nature, and they know that they actually get along very well. So we wanted to set that up from the beginning, and that was one of our story threads that we set up from the beginning. That first day, we wrote 1 strip. Besides writing 1 strip of actual comic, we wrote down the main story points that would take us through episodes 1 to episode 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we made a lot of changes along the way, and our wiki sort of blew out to hundreds of K of writing within weeks. Yeah. Well, that did come out of nowhere. A lot of the best things just came out of nowhere. But it wasn't just that we wanted it to be a more friendly group. We wanted it to be a more D&D group because David's a contributor to GURPS, and I mean he's written source books and stuff, and he's GM'd us a couple of times, and we have fun. We love the game. So we wanted to actually have a group that was more like our group, a group that has fun, and to maybe evangelize D&D a little bit and just sort of say, look, guys, this is why would you do D&D? Because it's fun, like this.
Yeah.
Sorry if I could just pick up on that.
Sure, go ahead.
We're just monopolizing this, but that's fine.
No,
for us. One of the things, this evangelizing D&D. To show people that D&D and similar role-playing games are actually fun, and you can do it with a group of friends who really like each other and get along well, and it's a great way to spend some time. And that's been very successful because we get a lot of feedback mail from fans. They send us email, and we've received several emails from people who say, I really loved your comics. I got into them because I was into Star Wars, and the whole gaming aspect was kind of new to me, but because of your comic, I've now sought out Dungeons and Dragons or some other role-playing game, and with some of my friends, we've had a go at it, and we really love it. It's really great. You've brought this wonderful thing into our lives, and that makes us feel really good. It's sort of mission accomplished in one sense for us, and it's
inspiring.
really good.
Yeah, I love how your comic really ties together almost like a version of headcanon and role playing. Like it shows the best of those things, like making up hey, wouldn't it be funny if this actually explained this super weird funny thing about Star Wars, and the just absolute pure joy and interconnectivity you can get by sitting around a table and just throwing some dice.
It fills us with glee, honestly, and it is actually the only reason we do it. We don't get any money from it, and our most regular emails are not from fans, but from people saying, "Hey, we would like an opportunity to monetize your webcomic." We used to actually respond to them because it was kind of like, no, we're good. If we ever tried monetizing it, Lucasfilm would probably come after us and shut us down. So we're good.
But that's obviously not why you do it, right?
No, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But then now we just don't respond to them. But we get lots of requests.
You're too old for it now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, whatever.
You're like, well, and the comic itself has been going on for so long without being monetized. Obviously, the joy that you get out of it is just in the pure creation and putting it out there and getting like the fan feedback. So, it's really a weird thing to be a fandom that was inspired by something else that now inspires other people to be fans of you. Because you have, like you posted, the fan art and the stories, and there's the wiki associated with Darths and Droids. Like, it's this just really, really interesting growth fandom. It's like you've opened the gates to not only D&D and role-playing games, but you've opened it wider for people to, transform Star Wars into something that's even bigger than even Darths and Droids. Have you had any like really inspiring interactions with fans that were really just wonderful based on the work that you've done?
The Cheddar Monk Academy stuff was just delightful.
Yeah, so to explain that, so we set up within the comic Jim the role player who plays Qui-Gon Jinn from the start of episode 1. And the conceit of the comic, for anybody listening who doesn't know already, the conceit of the comic is that Star Wars doesn't exist. And these guys are just playing a role-playing game, and they basically invent the entire Star Wars universe out of their own heads. And the GM basically tries to introduce these Jedi Knights, the Guardians of the Galaxy. And Jim kind of mishears everything, and he in his own mind, he makes up his own name for things, and he called them Cheddar Monks. And that was a sort of running gag through the early part of the comic strip. And then at one point we decided, well, we want to interact more with our fans, give them something, to do extra with our comic. And we set up the Cheddar Monk Academy, in which fans could take on challenges. We set challenges, and they could achieve them by doing various things, filming videos of themselves levitating or rolling dice and influencing the outcome with their Cheddar Monk abilities. And things like that. So we set all these challenges, gave them various point values, and a whole bunch of fans, like I think 50 people, got involved and made videos of themselves doing these various Cheddar Monk challenges. And at the end, we added all the points together and awarded prizes and certificates to everybody who was part of the Cheddar Monk Academy. And it was great fun. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I got my friend Evan to make a theme song for it, and it was an awesome theme song. And one of the Cheddar Monk challenges was to record yourself singing it. One person did a 3-part harmony with themselves, or was it 4-part? And they were playing the piano and they were singing in the harmony, and it was gorgeous. It was just the most beautiful thing. It was I pledge allegiance to Darths and Droids, and so on.
Yeah. So if you actually go to our website and click on Cheddar Monk Academy, I think there's actually a link at the top. It'll go to all of this stuff, and it's all archived there.
I will certainly link to it in the liner notes so that people can hear this. How does it feel to have fans of your own who like maintain wikis for you and stuff?
It's very surprising. I feel like we get relatively low levels of fan traffic. because a lot of it is just, they consume it, they enjoy it, they do it, but they don't necessarily feel a need to tell us, and fair enough. And so the first real hint that we were getting some kind of audience was that we just started viewing the stats and started seeing, wow, that's a lot of readers. That's 50,000 readers. That's quite a lot. And then the sort of Cheddar-Monk Academy stuff was just putting out our feelers and seeing, well, are people really? Are there really 50,000, or is that all bots? And it really was a lot of people.
That's awesome.
So it's good in one way, but it's also kind of scary in another way, because it's all these people.
We felt so much responsibility at that point, and suddenly it's like, wow, okay, let's just go through and make sure everything makes sense again, review the wikis, and I started getting a bit, I've always gone through, done runs through of the strips and made sure all the stuff makes sense for the characters. And a lot of the humor is character based, so getting our characters really solid and understanding what they would do. Quite often when we get to when we were writing a strip and going, okay, let's get to a funny. Well, how do we make the funny happen at the end here? The go-to way of doing that is to go, okay, what do the characters know and what do they want to do? And you just put yourself in the mind of the characters and just run with it. And often the characters do what you want and make the funny. But the part of the problem with that as well is that Jim is such an obvious, broad kind of character. He tends to dominate the punchline. So we really had to work to make the others come out as well.
If I could just pick that up a little bit.
Yeah.
This gets into the heart of how we write the comics. We do it in a group format.
Please.
Yeah.
Please do.
We sit around at work during our lunch breaks. We sort of take a long lunch once a week or so and sit around the table. And I've got we have a private wiki which I put open on the big screen, and we all look at the scripts we've written, and we all come up with ideas and throw things out. We've got a basic plot outline of what happens, because we match it up to the film scenes, obviously. So we know in the next scene, something's going to happen. R2-D2 is going to talk to C-3PO about something. But in the film, it's about something, that happens in the film. But for us, they could be talking about anything at all. So we know what's going to happen, and then we have to actually write the dialogue. And then we come down to, as Andrew says, the characters. We've come up with these characters, and it's actually mainly due to Andrew right here that we've got such strong characters with defined personalities. He was very important to us as a group early on in pushing and saying, we need to nail down these personalities of these characters. We need to figure out what motivates them, how they interrelate to each other, what sort of things they would typically say given a certain situation. So we got to know these characters from the inside. And we've in our wiki, we've got this huge character matrix of Jim, Annie, Pete, Sally, Ben, and exactly what they think of all of the others. So we've written all this down. We know what we can do at any point just by getting into the mind of Pete or Jim or Sally and saying, what would Sally say at this point? And then we can think, she would say this. And then, we write that dialogue.
Sally was particularly easy for me because it's based on my younger sister, Claire.
That's wonderful. Sally is such an interesting player because she's young when she first starts. Like, she's only, I feel like 10 maybe.
Yeah, we've never actually said.
Yeah, no, but pretty young. I mean, that's what the beauty of this comic is we know these little tidbits when they're talking out of character about these players of these characters that and love so well from Star Wars, but they play them slightly differently, and it sort of all makes more sense when you guys write it than it does sometimes in Star Wars, and could you do a brief description of each of the characters maybe in your own words, or each of the players? Sure.
So the first thing to notice is that we have canonical information about these characters which has never been revealed in the comic, like Sally's age, for example.
The GM's name
has never been revealed.
The country of origin.
Wait. Do you guys know what the GM's name is? Yeah, I'm not going to ask you to.
We're not going to tell you what the GM's name is.
No, but you know what the GM's name is?
We're not going to tell you if we know what his name is or not.
Fine.
Okay. We do, however, know exactly how old Sally is at each point in each film, even though it's never been officially revealed in any obvious way. There are hints and clues, and you can kind of figure it out. But many of the readers kind of make their own assumptions, and I think that's part of what's good about what we do is we actually allow the readers to make their own assumptions in many cases. There are some scenes in some of the films that we've written as comics, and we very deliberately wrote them to be ambiguous so that the readers can interpret it whichever way they like. We've done that many times, and people often ask us for, an explanation. Well, what's going on in this scene? I think this is happening. Is that correct? And there could be some other interpretation, and we never confirm or deny.
Rarely, but it does happen. We've browsed through the forums because it's got a reasonably active forum presence now. And if people come up with particularly interesting things, we go, how can we work this in? Is that compatible with what we've done so far? And sometimes it can alter the course of the comic strip.
We will admit to that. Sometimes fan theories have actually found their way into the comic. Yeah.
It's like crowdsourcing. You're just being smart.
Yeah. We won't say which ones exactly.
And honestly, most of the time they're guessing what we've already done, or they're saying something that's totally incompatible with the characters or with our plans. So it just doesn't work out.
So we have, like, doing the roll call, we have the GM who has been game mastering the whole game that we see, because there are, like, some of the players do take over between, like, the campaigns in a way, right? So we have the GM. Do you want to describe what the GM's like?
Yeah, so the GM is kind of the everyman. We've never said his name, and that's actually caused us a slight problem in a few strips, because there are obvious times when the players would call him by name, and then we have to kind of work around it in some way to make it sort of so that the name is never mentioned, but it doesn't seem too clumsy. The GM is really there to represent the reader in some sense. Anybody can put themselves in that position.
One of our biggest regrets with the GM was we realized about 20 strips in that we could make the GM ambiguous as to gender. Like we could have made them male or female. And we went, oh my God, we can't nail them down. And then we look back about 8 strips and we called him once.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big regret we have actually now. Yeah. It would have been nice to make the GM's gender completely in it as well.
I identify most with Annie, so
that's all right. Okay, so we can move on to Annie.
Well, no, because the original comic started with, like, Ben and Jim and Pete, right?
Okay, we'll do them in that order. Yeah. Okay, so we in fact started with Ben and Jim. Pete came in a little bit later.
After Sally.
After Sally, even.
Because Ben brought Sally, yeah.
Yes, that's right. So Ben and Jim were the original 2 players that played Qui-Gon Jinn and young Obi-Wan Kenobi. And we haven't said explicitly, but Ben and Jim have known each other for a long time, and they've always played games together. They've known this GM for a long time. The 3 of them have a sort of history that goes before. We don't reveal any of what that is, but they all know each other. And then as the other characters get introduced, they only know certain subsets of the ones who are already there. Mm-hmm. So we start with Ben and Jim. Ben is the sensible gamer. He likes playing games, and he's kind of serious about them. He treats them seriously. He likes to win board games, for example. Jim is more relaxed. He's just casual. He's a casual gamer. He does games for the social interaction, and so he can switch his brain off because he's a scientist. He's a PhD student at the start of the strip, studying geology or geophysics. And this kind of matches a couple of the people in our own writing group. There's serious gamers who, when we get together and play games, they do everything they can to win the game, and that's their whole point of being there. And Andrew is putting his hand up. There's also Stephen. And then there are social gamers like myself, who I go along to these game things and I play the games, and I'm trying to win the game, but I don't care if I win. I'm just there to have fun. So what happens usually is Stephen or Andrew end up winning because they care much more about actually winning the game.
Yes.
And I pretty much lose every single game that we ever play, but I don't care because I'm having fun with my friends.
And it's an interesting mindset, and I still don't understand how to get there. Sometimes I wish I could do that. Not care about winning.
Yeah. So Jim is like that. Jim is basically there just to, eat pizza and throw down a beer and have fun. and he doesn't care what happens in the game.
I don't know. He had some massive character development over the saga so far. It's it is wonderful to see. I know it's Annie's influence, but
Yes,
I love it. I love how much his player character, like he as a player, as a character in your comic, has grown, and then he plays these more complex characters as he goes. It's just wonderful.
yeah. So he started off in this sort of very laissez-faire way, and he doesn't really care about what's going on, and he's just throwing things around at random, and he has these wacky ideas. But as he's gone, he hasn't changed in that he hasn't changed into a winning type player. He's changed into a role-playing type player with Annie's influence. So the characters he plays are getting more complex, but he's still wacky.
So we've been influenced by a bunch of different theories of player interaction. There's some role-playing types and typecasts. I think there was the Munchkin, the Real Man. There's a variety of them, and then there's some theories in Magic: The Gathering about player psychodynamics, which is the Jenny, the Tammy, and the Spike. So the Tammy is the Tammy is a classic person who's just after an awesome experience, and they will just prod things to see what happens, and if something awesome happens, then they're like, "Wow, that was the best experience ever." Whereas the Jenny, she's more about having creating an experience, the Minecraft player or the person who wants to build a thing and show, "Look what I have done, look what I have made, isn't it awesome?" And that's more the Ben kind of character. He wants to build a really detailed character with backstory and stuff. But even more so, as we come along to Annie, she is the ultimate Jenny kind of character. And then there's Spike. Spike wants to win.
And that's
Pete.
That's Pete.
Did you want to say anything else about Ben before you move on to Sally or Pete?
Ben is kind of the most problematic character we have, actually. He's sort of in the middle of everything. He's mild-mannered. He wants to play the game, and he wants to do the game right. He wants to role play in the correct way. He wants to do sensible things. He wants his character to do sensible things that advance the story and try and progress towards the goal of the adventure. He's a little bit rules lawyery in the same way as Pete, but not nearly so much. So he abides by the rules of the game, and he tries to perform the best he can within them in a sort of mild-mannered way. He's not pushing the boundaries of the rules like Pete would do, not lawyering the rules.
We had him as the real man type of role playing, the person who's really up and down, tries to make a real setting and have the character respond in realistic ways. Part of it was due to the chaos in his own life, and the difficulties he was having, that he likes having the game as a release mechanism for him. And different players play for different reasons. We kind of had him explicitly as being, I'm role playing because it helps me.
Yeah, so Ben's background, which only comes out over the strip, is that he's struggling with an overbearing father who wants to push him into medicine as a career, which Ben doesn't really want to do. And sort of at the start, he's going, yes, I'm going into medical school because that's what Dad says I have to do. And over the course of the story, he sort of realizes he's going to be miserable if he does this. And that triggers a very emotional and sort of hard reaction in Ben. He seems like the sort of mild-mannered guy who's got it all together, but he really isn't. He's in some sense the most fragile of the characters.
He's using the game to escape all of that, and all of that. He's using the game to escape real life stress.
Yeah, and bits of it come out in what he does, and there were specific moments in the story where he's unable to hold it back.
And that culminates in him leaving the game for a significant amount of time and sort of cutting ties with his parents. And at the same time, he's kind of forced into cutting ties with Sally, his little sister, which is kind of a slightly unsympathetic thing that we did to him. It makes him feel like he's being sort of callous. And, we were aware of this when we were writing it. And Sally's really upset that she doesn't hear from her big brother for a long time. But eventually he comes back and sort of, he doesn't quite fully reconcile with his parents. He sort of has to confront them and say, look, I'm not going to do medicine just because you want me to. I need to do something with my own life. But the whole way through, he's still very much friends with Sally and wants to treat her right. But it's difficult for him. So yeah, he has a struggle.
This is one of the things we plotted out early, and I hate to say it, but I have a feeling that a lot of this happened because we needed him to be away for a section.
Well, sometimes constraints create plot, right? Because you had a constraint. You're like, Ben's character is not in, like, the character he's playing in Star Wars is not there for a period of time. So you had a constraint, and that actually breeds creativity in some ways.
Honestly, this has been the most incredibly creative thing for us to do because there were so many constraints, and it forced us to go, this is the canon. This is the truth. This is what we're seeing. Why?
Yeah.
Really, though.
Why is it so weird sometimes?
And then suddenly when we realize
it's a giant space monster in every single movie that is either a puppet or badly animated.
And it did force us to confront that. And when we realize why, it's like it's a discovery. We didn't make it up. It was there waiting to be found.
And this leads us on to the third character in our story, which is Sally, Ben's young sister. Sally came about because we were thinking about Jar Jar Binks.
The problem.
Jar Jar Binks is possibly the most hated character in all of Star Wars. We wanted to make Jar Jar Binks awesome and beloved.
Yes.
So,
you did. I mean, you did for me. That's
yes.
Yeah. So early on, we were talking because we started with episode 1, and we go, okay, we have a problem. Jar Jar's in this film. And if we make comics and we put Jar Jar, people are going to hate our comics. And we thought, no, we've got to do something different. We have to make the readers love Jar Jar. How are we going to do this?
I came in with the mission statement. Yes, Jar Jar's going to be the best character. At the end of this, people are going to be saying, I wish there was more Jar Jar.
Yeah. And
I'm happy we get way more Sally. She's amazing.
So the solution we came up with is obviously Sally, Ben's younger sister. She's so young. We won't say her age exactly, but she's so young that when she joins the game, it's because Ben is supposed to be babysitting her and has to go to the game. And so he takes her along, and she's playing with her dolls in the corner for a little bit, but then she joins in the game. And it's a game of make-believe. Role-playing is just make-believe, and kids can do that fine. But of course, their make-believe is very different to the structured make-believe rules of a role-playing game. And this is where the conflict around what Sally invents in her mind and says, oh, I'm doing this, and this is great, let's do this, and this is what happens. And all of these things just come out of her head. So Jar Jar is invented in that way, and a whole lot of other things are as well. And another one, this goes back to another one of our writing rules in our group. Andrew here.
Can you share the writing rules?
Yeah. So Andrew here has done a lot of theatre and improv and stuff like this, and he's informed us that when you're doing improv theatre in particular, it's another form of role-playing. Improv theatre, people come up with stuff. What you do, the rule of improv theatre is you never contradict them.
You say yes.
Somebody says something absolutely outrageous, you don't go, no, that's not what happens.
You say yes.
Maintain the improv, you go,
and.
Yes, and. So we wanted our GM to be a little bit more of that style. So when people in our game come up with stuff, and mostly it's Sally, but also Annie does it a lot as well. When they come up with stuff, the GM tries not to contradict them. He does sometimes contradict them because out of necessity, because it's going to ruin everything. But a lot of the time he runs with what happens. So he's kind of easygoing in that way.
He's kind of an easygoing evil djinn.
So Sally comes up with all this ridiculous stuff, and the GM just runs with it. And that actually generates much of the ridiculousness that is in Star Wars.
Yeah, no, and I feel that. Like I role play with my 2 kids, and when you say, hey, what is this place called? They'll come up with the craziest names if you just let them go, and it's wonderful to see.
Yeah. So we had to channel this young child and come up with all this weird stuff, and Andrew helped because his sister was the model.
That's it's awesome, and it makes the oddities of Star Wars make sense because it's like, oh, that came from Sally's brain, of course.
Yes, yes. The Queen is a 14-year-old who is beautiful and wise and lives on the other side of the planet and blah blah blah. Just,
And
Yeah.
wears nothing but beautiful dresses. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
that was a little girl's imagination.
Yep.
Yeah, and the dinosaur ponies and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, so I think our experiment with Sally was extremely successful because, as Andrew said, our goal was to make Jar Jar the most beloved character, and it actually happened that after Jar Jar's last appearance in episode 2, or he might have had a very brief cameo in 3, we actually got people writing on our forums, "Oh no, that's the last we'll ever see of Jar Jar. We wish we could have more Jar Jar."
Yeah.
Yes. Success.
Yes, exactly.
I think part of the secret of it as well is that Jar Jar's not 100% a good guy. Sally's brain goes in all sorts of directions, and sometimes it's, now I'm going to eat the rest of the characters. I've got my Gungans friends with me. It's chow and down time. We're going to eat you. And it, because she's just going with what is fun and what she feels like in this much more chaotic kind of style. And the GM is at that point perfectly happy to run with it all. And guys go, yes, all right, you let her do this. I will continue.
Yeah, and then the other characters have to try and talk their way out of it. It's good. Okay, I guess we should move on to the other characters. So we've gone.
Pete.
Pete is next. Yes.
I'm going to mention my favorite thing about Pete: his pre-rolled dice. And the scene that he GMs in Attack of the Clones where he suddenly has jet boosters. Like, I literally read those comics thinking, this is brilliant. Like, no, seriously, because it was just like, this all makes sense. How did I not see this before? And the fact that he's mute and a dwarf and, you know, like, can't really move very fast, but he's super intelligent and he can hack anything. It's like, yeah, that's R2-D2. Oh my God, that's R2-D2.
Yeah. So the original goal, we wanted to make Jar Jar loved. And this kind of got mutated over time. But our original goal was, if we make Jar Jar loved, can we make a beloved character in Star Wars kind of hated in some way, the bad guy? And we thought, well, what if we make R2-D2, who is one of the most beloved characters in Star Wars? What if we make him kind of a jerk? Not actually like, you know, a villain, but just, you know, a jerk, a guy you don't want to get along with. And we thought, how do you make it?
Yeah, and have him evolve as well. Have we said everything that is to be said about Pete? Is there stuff in the wiki that we haven't revealed about Pete?
There may be.
You know the bit I mean? Okay, never mind.
We've revealed his job.
Oh, we have. Okay, yeah, that was a bit. So we were working towards his job, which is an actual lawyer for ages. Yeah, so for ages, people thought he was a computer programmer because he had all of the tropes for it. But secretly, he was a highfalutin lawyer, you know, a criminal lawyer, talking his way through stuff in the, you know, an actual practicing in front of the bar kind of lawyer.
That gave us the idea to introduce him as a rules lawyer, the most jerky type of role-playing gamer you can come across in some sense. So he joins the game and he's just there to min-max his character, to twist the rules as much as he can, to maximize his own power and abilities. And that's how he gets his kicks in during the game. And he comes in, he's Jim's friend. He's been Jim's friend for a long time. That's the background. But he's never met Ben before. So Jim has these two friends, Ben and Pete, who have never met each other until they join the game together. And Pete comes in and he doesn't want to play a human character. He wants to play a robot because they're superior. And he has all these skills. He's all min-maxed out. He's got his special robot dice made of titanium. He's a deep role player. Even though he's highly logical and his background initially does speak to being a computer programmer or something like that. He's very technical minded, but that's not his career. He starts off in this way and he's just trying to lawyer the rules as much as he can. With
every character we made sure that they had a journey. And Pete's journey was from jerk to being a sympathetic jerk. And particularly pulling out moments like his evolving friendship with Sally, and a gradually advice to Sally over time, and being able to help people out. An integral part of his character is that he loves difficult challenges. And the reason, he wants to min-max stuff, but he also wants to use those min-max stats optimally. So he's got his pre-roll dice. He wants to use his massive D20 that, is only usable once and then will explode. He wants to be forced into these situations. So when the GM makes it super, super hard, sets the everything to impossible level, he couldn't be happier. That's the sort of positive side of him. We wanted to make sure that even though, in normal circumstances, he can be a jerk, he also rises to the challenge.
That's actually an important point that I wanted to touch on. We've seen feedback from readers saying that the GM is down on Pete and he's like always blocking Pete from doing stuff. Pete sort of comes up with these min-max ways to do things, these awesome, cool things, and the GM continually puts roadblocks in his way and says, no, you can't do that. Your abilities don't let you do that thing. And then Pete has to sort of engineer some sneaky way around it. The GM is putting these roadblocks in front of Pete continually within the game to say he can't do these various things with this set of abilities that he has, and then Pete has to try and engineer some sneaky way around it. And readers have often interpreted that in feedback to us as the GM really is down on Pete. He's trying to stop him from having fun. But the important thing is that Pete has fun by being confronted by roadblocks and trying to engineer his way around it. And the GM knows that. The GM realizes that for Pete to have fun, he has to stop him from doing what he wants to do so that Pete can be sneaky and get around it and do it anyway.
And then feel all the more awesome. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's great. On to my favorite character. Annie.
Annie, okay. So we've got the various role-playing archetypes. We've got the min-maxer, Pete. We've got the loony player, which is Sally. The real man, the real role player. The real role player is Annie. That's where she comes in. She's there her background is in acting, not in gaming. She's much more like the improv actor. She comes in and she's in Ben's acting class. Ben is taking an acting class as part of his rebelliousness against having to do medicine. And he meets Annie there and he invites her to the game. And at first she doesn't quite understand what's going on. She's not sure what all these dice are for. She's thought it was just kind of role-playing and acting. So she invents all this character background and story, and she gets really deep into what's going on and the motivations behind her characters and all this sort of stuff. And she's not too concerned with the rules of the game. She just wants to create a really complex character and then play that character to the hilt.
To the hilt, no matter where it leads.
Yes.
Ends up leading to a very, very dark place because she's playing Anakin. Obviously, the progression of Anakin through the first 6 films is a very deep and dark and tragic story. And
honestly, that moment in episode 3 might be the culmination of our writing career, all of us collectively, just where at the very moment of betrayal where Anakin strangles Padme is the most beautiful moment for Annie and Jim. It's just, that was the best. I don't think we'll ever top that.
Yeah, so many people were so convinced because Annie is playing Anakin, and at that point, Jim, Qui-Gon Jinn, his first character, has died, and Jim takes over playing Padme. So they're playing these two characters have this romantic relationship in the game, and at the same time, they're developing this romantic relationship in real life outside the game. And Jim is very awkward with this because he's never done this sort of thing before in real life, and so that awkwardness comes through both in their in-character dialogue, some of which is absolutely cringeworthy.
Yes.
Especially the episode 2 stuff.
It makes like so much sense with like some of Padme's lines being played by a guy who doesn't know how to play a girl character.
Yeah. And so the relationship develops both in and out of character until the end of episode 3, where there's this huge confrontation. And again, feedback from our readers was everybody was saying, oh, we're coming up to the climax where Anakin chokes Padme. Totally, this is going to be Jim and Annie breaking up because they have a huge fight. And
we played into that a bit.
Yeah, we kind of tried to set it up as though that was where we were going, but we didn't go there. We did the complete opposite. So in game, Anakin is choking Padme for betraying him, and all this drama is going on. And out of the game, they're actually resolving a previous argument that they'd had over something completely trivial.
And Jim is showing off, finally, his ability to act and to do improv properly. And he's worked hard at it, and he's in character, and he does it, and he is so proud of him.
I know, and it puts her over the top and was like, actually, no, you are awesome. This is good.
Yep. So Annie was not just a theatre geek, but a musical geek as well, and we tried to put a lot of that in there. It was a little bit stymied by our us not being quite so into musical theatre as she is. So we put in what we could where we could, but that always felt like a kind of a miss. I really wish I'd either studied up more, or else we've made it something we're more familiar with, for her to sort of have that side of her.
So Annie has a complex background outside the game as well. There's a few things we've hinted at. She doesn't have a very good family life. She got along really well with her father, who taught her hot rodding, of all things, how to make cars really cool, how to drive really fast.
Based obscurely enough on a friend I knew a while ago who was totally that person. I was kind of going, okay, we can use that.
But her father died at some point, and I'm not sure if we revealed exactly when. I think it was definitely before she joined the game, and she doesn't get along with her mother. So some of this has come out in very subtle ways, but there's probably more we could reveal with that in the future if we go there. So that's the core 5 players who do the first 3 campaigns, episodes 1 to 3. Then in episode 4, we had the issue that we've got all these characters, and then there's Luke Skywalker, who is a kind of a new character who comes in, and we had roles planned for all of the 5, and we thought, well, maybe we should get a new guy to play Luke. And so we came up with Corey. And
we brainstormed that name.
Oh yeah, it took us like months to figure out what name we were going to give to this character. And eventually we listed like 30 different names, and then we had a poll. We came up with a voting system where we had to vote for a certain number of things, and we added up all the scores and blah blah blah. And Corey came out the top. And then we were all looking at it going, Corey, really? Maybe we should use the second one. But no, we ran with Corey. And I think it's actually a good thing that we introduce a new character, because Luke in episode 4 is the naive character who doesn't know what's going on and who has to learn stuff as he goes. And he kind of represents the viewer in episode 4. The viewer is Luke and just exploring this strange new galaxy, the first Star Wars movie in 1977.
That everyone else seems to know stuff about, but he's brand new to it.
Yeah. So Corey in episode 4 is actually kind of more a representative of the reader than the GM even is at that stage, because Corey is learning this new stuff, and he's kind of very naive and doesn't know what's going on, and slowly absorbs this material. And he gets better at it, of course, and figures it all out. But that takes the full movie.
And he's more from a gamer kind of background, a computer games structure. And one thing, we were trying to, we drew up our matrix again, added Corey to it, went across and went down, and we're kind of going, okay, Corey and Sally, let's not do the obvious thing here, because that would be kind of dumb. Let's not match every single male and female character in our meta world, because that's going full George Lucas, and you should never go full George Lucas.
Yeah, so we started with them being a bit antagonistic, Corey and Sally, that they don't really get along, and anybody looking at that initially would go, young guy, young girl, they don't get along, they're going to get together. We didn't want to do that, so it's out of the question. Yeah,
we did struggle with finding a way because plots work in the way that they work. People are drawn together, people are drawn apart. If you don't do a thing, then there's a gap. In story terms, and you want it to resolve in an interesting fashion. You don't want it to just sort of fizzle or just sort of be sitting there and do nothing. So we needed that, as with all characters, you need their relationship to be based in something honest and meaningful. So we worked extra hard at making sure that they could be friends, but just friends.
Has doing this webcomic changed how you view Star Wars?
Yeah, Yeah, so much. But firstly, we know a ton more about Star Wars than we ever thought we would. We'd probably be,
yes.
yeah, we'd probably be more. I never. Star Wars was my thing. I went to see Star Wars in 1977. I was 7, and it was awesome. It sort of blew me away, and I collected the comics, and I was totally into it. I had the little figurines, the original ones that are now worth a mint, and I have no idea what happened to them. And it's always been my fandom, way more than Star Trek. I never really got into Star Trek, so it's Star Wars for me. And nonetheless, when I started doing Darths and Droids, I was, we had to learn all of the extended universe stuff, and we got way more into it than I ever expected. So now I'd probably do better than most geeks on Star Wars trivia kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
We've introduced our own, although we'd get stuff wrong simply because it's part of our fandom, not the official Star Wars one. Like what is it? Not Ridgeway, the character that we introduced out of nowhere.
Dib Foundway.
Dib Foundway, yes. We made a new character. Well, it's a background character in the original Star Wars, and we just sort of looked at him. It's a guy in a backpack in Mos Eisley, and we just went, he's Dib Foundway. He's got this enormous backstory, blah, blah, blah. And we made it up. Oh, no, I think a fan did. And then we just went, okay, he is part of the canon now. He is our canon. Dib Foundway.
Yeah, it was a post in a forum somewhere.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It's playing on the trope that every character you see on the screen in Star Wars has this enormous backstory, which you wouldn't know unless you went to Wikipedia and looked it up. And there was this guy in the background in Mos Eisley in episode 1 or 2 or something. Episode 2, I think.
Really? Okay.
I can't remember. And on some forum, somebody said the question, "Oh, does that guy in the backpack have a huge backstory?" And somebody else, I don't even know who it was, wrote this post, a couple of paragraphs saying, "Oh yes, that's Dib Foundway. He's a spice farmer from Kessel who blah blah blah, and
moved to Mos Eisley, ended up getting into trouble and blah blah blah." Yeah,
he got into trouble with Jabba the Hutt and ended up in the cantina with on Mos Eisley and stuff. We just saw this and said, "Yep, okay, we'll use that." So we imported that whole story in, and it's revealed through the background chatter of the random pilots at the end of episode 4 when they're doing the Death Star run to destroy that. Some of the pilots chattering to each other, and they're revealing this backstory about Dib Foundway.
I forgot we did that.
Yeah, that's cool.
I was part of our internal sort of fandom for so long, and we were just gleeful about having this character that nobody knew about, and we just built up more and more backstory for him. I remember, and we were going, we've got to fit him in somewhere. I forgot we actually did.
Yeah, we did. So yeah, and what Andrew says, it's becoming harder and harder as the years go by to disentangle our own canon from actual Star Wars canon. Often in our meetings, when we're writing, we'll be talking about something and we're going, "Oh, how can we do this?" And somebody will go, "Oh, that's that thing that happened on this planet, blah 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 thing," and everybody else is sitting around going, "Was that in the movie or is that just our comic?" And we're all going, "I don't know. Let's look it up." Yeah, so we actually have to sometimes look it up to find out if it's
Wikipedia, Darths and Droids wiki next to each other, looking at things.
We make a lot of use of Ono Robot as well. That's a search tool that's got all of the Darths and Droids stuff archived. So we're just constantly looking up stuff. They're going, "What have we said in the past?"
So it's a good way to keep organized.
Yeah. That and TV tropes.
You guys are on TV tropes. That's
everywhere in TV tropes.
So what is the hardest thing about running the comic for as long as you have?
You need a person like DMM. If you don't have a DMM, then it's not going to work. He is the engine behind the comic. He's the person who, after an initial period where a bunch of us tried illustrating them, I think I did like 2 or 3, and one of the other guys, David Karlov, did maybe 5 or 6. DMM has illustrated every single other one of them. And if you don't have someone like him who just does the huge bulk work of it, then it's not going to happen. It's great that he's got strong seconds like us. I have a kind of a feeling like if the rest of us didn't do it, he'd still do it, probably at a slower speed, but it would still happen. So yes, I take inspiration from DMM's incredible work ethic.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. The guys help with all the writing and coming up with ideas, and Andrew has been brilliant for that. Doing a webcomic, Doing a webcomic requires one thing above all else, and that's somebody doing the work, the grunt work, the actual assembling the comics and putting the coding for the website and all that sort of stuff. And if nobody's doing that, it doesn't happen. You need someone
and not getting discouraged. Like if this isn't at some point you're going to create a comic that's not as good as the previous one. You know it. You just wrote a brilliant one, and you can't top that. You don't even necessarily want to top that, because if you keep topping it, you will never get to the end of it. So you still have to make it. You still have to do it. If you don't, then the thing stalls, and that's what happens with a lot of people. If you don't have that work ethic and you do it despite knowing it's not the best, and you don't keep doing it, then you're never going to top it again. And so, DMM's the absolute best and a total inspiration for making sure that things happen, and that if it's not the best, you do it anyway. And then you'll come up with a better one later.
Yeah, this is kind of the whole philosophy behind making webcomics, which is a hobby which, it has very, very little reward, to be honest. The reward is doing the work. The reward is not getting money from it, from advertising or whatever. The reward is not getting people, getting fans, going crazy over you. Because even though we do have fans who write to us and say they appreciate the comic, it's quite rare. We've got 50,000, 100,000 readers or whatever it is. 2 or 3 of them will write to us and say how much they like it. We also get comments on forums from people saying, oh, I didn't like this strip. They did something wrong. They screwed up. And also, people will discover the strip for the first time, and there's threads on Reddit or something, and someone will say, hey, look at this funny Star Wars comic, and then there'll be 50 replies going, yeah, I looked at it, it sucks. You have to be able to wear that and realize you're doing it for the love of it, you're publishing it because you want to, not because it's going to make lots of other people happy.
Yeah, I honestly, this is a message that I've internalized now with another webcomic we're making called Eavesdropper, where it has literally, maybe 3 or 4 readers in total, and we're doing it anyway. We're making it. It's an idea that sat in my head for a long time, and we're getting it out there. But you have to do it for the love of it. If you don't, it's not going to work.
Yeah, well, I'm actually sure there's more readers than that, but that's about the feedback we get. It's not very much. And this is the case with pretty much all webcomics except the top 0.01%, which is XKCD and comics like that everybody knows. Those guys, they make a living off comics. But as I said, they're the top 0.01%. 99.99% of webcomic makers are not going to do that. People will get the idea, oh, I'm going to make a comic. It's going to be hilarious and everybody will love me like XKCD. And they put 3 comics up and they get one person writing to them saying, your comic sucks. And then they give up.
Or worse than that, it is like that for a while because their first idea is great. And they write it down and it's funny. Their friends laugh. It's good. Then they have to write the second one and it's not as good. And they put it up and people don't like it and they go, that's it. My ideas are done. I'm out of here.
So how do you work past like that? I mean, it is like the work. You get the joy from doing it, I think, right? Like you said.
It's good to have long-term plans, to be excited about them, and to have a good collaborator. It's important to have a strong second, but it's more important to have a strong primary. A person who will, and honestly, DMM has inspired me to, become my own creator to actually push through it. It can be a bit brutal at times. I don't read the forums anymore for stuff because it just gets too off-putting and I procrastinate. I don't know how DMM doesn't procrastinate, but part of it is just getting in the habit, sitting down, doing it. Quantity over quality.
Yeah.
Through quantity shall arise quality. And it's true.
Yeah.
This is actually a lesson I learned from Andrew. Even though I had been doing the irregular webcomic for a few years before I met him, and that was just my own little, Lego strip with a gag a day sort of thing. Because they were so quick and easy to make, I just taking photos of Lego and not drawing things. So it didn't take a whole lot of time to make. So I managed to keep it up. And I got, a few people interested and made some friends through that. And it just became a habit, essentially. So I had this habit of making comics every day. And then when I started Darths and Droids, that habit sort of transferred across. And that kept me going for a while. And then in discussions with Andrew about the creative process, I learned this thing. He came up with it. Maybe he's taken it from somewhere else. But he taught me that this thing for comics in particular is quantity is the most important thing. Quality is something you can aim for, but you can't guarantee you'll hit it. Quantity is something you can just do. You don't have to be good to do lots and lots of stuff, produce lots of stuff. If you produce lots of stuff, a lot of it might not be very good, but if you produce lots of stuff, you will get better at it. And it's like any hobby. You want to learn the piano, and it takes a long time. You just have to practice. Practice is what gets you there. Yeah. And with comics, it's the same thing.
Yeah, and you have to practice intelligently. You have to do things intelligently and work on them. But you're presumably I'm talking to you. Yes, you.
Marie Claire. Yes.
No, the listener.
Oh, the listener. Oh, okay. Yes, you, the listener. Andrew has some words for you.
Yeah. Oh man, I've forgotten them now. I had a beautiful phrasing and now I've forgotten. Them. Let's return to it. I'll address the listener directly later. Meanwhile, I'll write something down.
Okay. No, but I love that. I love what you're saying, because many people get, caught up in their own heads about getting something started. And in a lot of ways, just getting it out and working on it and iterating it over time. You try hard, of course, but iterating it over time produces the quality because you're getting it over time.
Listener, sorry. You have to do it that way. You have to do things over time, and it will get better through practice. But as people say, you can't just mindlessly go through the iteration cycles and sort of treat it as a place for your brain to go on vacation while you do the exercise, because you won't get better that way. But you will get better by getting bored doing it, because when you're bored, your brain will try and escape and try and do and you'll need to apply your intelligence. So it does naturally happen through practice. Mindless practice doesn't work, but it won't be mindless because it's you and you are smart. That's it.
I love it. Well, no, it's good because it's like your brain is going to start thinking about the thing that you've been thinking about in new and interesting ways and taking you off in new directions, right?
Yes, that's right. And there's a guy called Zay Frank. Did a very inspirational series of web videos back in the early 2000s, and his big message was, working through iteration and avoiding a thing called brain crack, which is an idea sitting in your head for so long that when you do get to writing it down, it's not as good as it was in your head. And any time you're doing creation for the first time, you're doing something that's been in your head for a while. You write it down, it's not as good as you're expecting. All of the bits in your brain that were sort of filling in the gaps, they're not there. It looks sparse. It looks uninspiring. It's not as good. You get depressed. So solution is recognize that that's going to happen. My eavesdropper thing was sitting as brain cracked for about 10 years before I wrote it down. It was very depressing and disappointing when I started writing it down, but you just work through it. You get it done.
And it's a thing that people who create things and stick them on the internet attract a lot of criticism. And you just have to deal with that, because it can be very off-putting, but you need a thick enough skin to realize that they're only criticizing you because they haven't done anything themselves. It's very, very easy to get an idea and say, oh, I could make a better comic than that. I could do this. I could do that. Yeah, that's fine. You have to put your money where your mouth is and actually do it. And so many people don't do that. They're happy to criticize without doing anything.
Yeah, it is also possible to have a thin skin and still do the creation. If reading stuff does get you down, don't read it. Just don't go to the forums. Don't resist the urge to do the Google search.
Darths and Droids only follows 8 followers or 8 people on Twitter.
That's because I don't want to be overwhelmed with stuff.
Yeah.
Consuming social media.
You can mute people.
Sorry?
You can mute people.
Oh, yeah.
Wait.
No, I know. I just found that so cute because you guys get you have over 1,000 followers on Twitter, which you just post the links to the comics on primarily, and you only follow 8 people in like a couple of them like are like why are you following that person?
Sometimes it's they followed us, so we're following them back. Other times it's, oh yeah, I know that guy. Oh yeah, click.
So I have a tough question for you, and then I kind of have a follow-up question. So first is, what is maybe we'll go David and then Andrew and then Andrew and then David for these. So David, what is your first memory of Star Wars?
My first memory of Star Wars. I know for a fact that I saw Episode 4 in the cinema in 1977, but I don't remember that. What I remember most vividly is my first memories of Star Wars was being, as a little kid, going to my friend's place, and he had the Star Wars Raid on the Death Star board game. Because, in 1977, George Lucas signed all these deals, and they made enormous amounts of Star Wars merchandise. And one of them was this board game, and you rolled your dice and you moved your little guys around and you blew up the Death Star in this board game, and it was really cool. And then we had the action figures, and the Darth Vaders and the Luke Skywalkers all sold out instantly. So my friend and I, we had Hammerhead and Greedo and another weird alien from the cantina. And, we played shoot 'em up games with these guys. And honestly, I mean, it's not that exciting, but that's my first memory of Star Wars. I know I saw the film, but I don't remember it. But afterwards, all that merchandise, the toys and things, I remember that vividly.
Andrew?
Very similar. I saw it in the cinema. I don't remember a thing about it, and it's really puzzling to me that I don't, because it was obviously hugely formative, and I made my mum take me to see it again because she told me that that's what happened, but I don't remember that experience either. What I do remember mostly is the comic book. There was an early comic book, a really large format kind of one, like not your typical A4 size. It was more like A3. And it was a very brief summary, and I just read that obsessively over and over again. I also had some figurines. I had 2 Admiral Akbars, and my mum found one of them. So I've got it sitting around somewhere now. And again,
that's awesome.
I couldn't get the Darth Vader, couldn't get the Luke Skywalker. Although I had a feeling I had the Darth Vader because I remember the cloak, but
we should auction your Admiral Akbar at the end.
The next question is going to be a little bit more difficult because I know that you guys are a little bit away because you're going to have finishing off Rogue One, and then you're going to do Solo next, and then you're going to do the sequel trilogy. What are you looking forward to the most about the sequel trilogy?
And you wanted Andrew to answer this first. Go ahead, Andrew.
So I haven't been involved in writing for a bit, and it's partly because I got made redundant from the company that we're in. So I haven't been as involved in the writing sessions. I have been there was a while when I was not at work anymore that I Skyped in or just, called in on the sessions, which is why I said, people Skype in all the time. Since then, I've started work, and now it's just impossible for me to participate in writing sessions anymore. So I've been following along as a listener for all of Rogue One and about half of Episode 6, actually. So what I'm looking forward to is reading all of them.
Wow, that was a cop-out.
I do have access to the wiki, so what I'm hoping is that when we get to the sequel, the full trilogy, I'll be reading through on the wiki and helping with the plotting, because that's always the fun bit. And oh my god, Rey is so cool.
Rey is amazing. Yeah.
Can't wait to ruin her. No, I mean, do lots of things.
Well, I'm gonna have a follow-up question after David, but I have a follow-up question.
This is a hard question. I'm not sure what I'm looking forward to most. If you'd asked me what I was looking forward to most a few years ago, before they announced they were making a sequel trilogy, I would have said I was looking forward to the end when we could have a rest. But then they announced this sequel trilogy.
And now 3 more movies.
Yeah,
it's going forever.
Plus forever, yes.
Yeah, they're never going to let us stop. So, yeah, we had this idea that when we finished Episode 6, that would be the end of things because there would be no more Star Wars movies. And at that point, we've done this whole thing sort of under the radar officially. As far as we know, nobody at Lucasfilm knows what we're doing. We've never had any contact from Lucasfilm or Disney. We've never actually tried to contact them either. And at the end of episode 6, our plan was we're finished. We'll send a letter to Lucasfilm and say, hey, we've made this huge comic and it's very popular on the internet. Would you like to enter some sort of agreement to publish it as a book? We can't do that without their permission because we'd get sued. Yes. Our pants would get sued off. So we thought we'd do that. And then they announced more films. And then our fans were like, oh, you're totally going to do episode 7, right? And we were like, how can we not?
Yeah.
And then we thought, 7, 8, 9, it's going to be like a big, long plotting thing. Those 3 movies are going to take 4 or 5 years or whatever it is to come out. We don't know what's happening in episode 9 yet. So we don't want to start plotting episode 7 until we know what happens in episode 9. Because it's the same with episodes 1. We started writing episode 1. Yeah. We needed to know what happened at the end of episode 3 in order to set it up in episode 1. And the same for 4, 5, 6.
Yep.
So we haven't really started plotting episode 7 yet at all. I mean, 7 and 8 are out now and we've seen them and we've got some vague ideas what to do with specific scenes, but we haven't plotted a storyline yet, which is why we're going back and doing Rogue One at the moment to give us time until episode 9 comes out.
I seriously cannot wait until you guys do the like hand touching scene of like, what will that be?
So I think what we're looking forward to is actually figuring out what our story is.
Yeah.
It's going to be harder. Every single time it gets harder. And the writing sessions were getting, increasingly difficult to go to and just come up with stuff because we need to do stuff that's new and, stuff that's, if not new, at least fun. And making sure that we introduce stuff that's not just a rehashing of things we've already done. We've been trying to introduce ways of role playing and things that you can do in the games and stuff that will be of interest to people. It's hard. With a long-running series, you don't want to repeat yourself, and God knows we've come up with the perfect title for. So we have one session a week for writing, and then another one where we review the strips that are already there and come up with titles. And coming up with titles is really quite hard and takes a lot more time than you'd expect. And the number of times when we've come up with the perfect title and then gone, have we done that? Yeah, we've done that title before. So that's just going to get harder and harder.
Yeah. At this point, every episode, every comic we publish has a title, and so there's over 1,600 of them now. We sit down, we look at the strips that have been made to proofread them and make sure that they're okay. And sometimes we make minor adjustments at that point, and we come up with a title. And some strips, this is one strip that we make. 1/3 of a week's output can take us half an hour or more just to think of the title for that strip. Other ones are more obvious and quicker. But yeah, we don't want to get stale and repeat things. So we're going to try and come up with new stuff, new and interesting.
Yep.
That's awesome. Thank you for calling into this and calling in and having this conversation with me all the way from Australia. And I really appreciate getting to know both of you. I would love to have you back when you're ready to kick off, I don't know, Solo maybe, or the sequel trilogy, and just kind of chat about this more, because this is a lot of fun. You guys are really interesting. And kind of my people too, which is good. Board games, role-playing games, Star Wars, it's all in there.
Yeah.
But what I want to say is thank you again. And if you want to say where everybody can find you, maybe we'll go Andrew, then David.
Everyone can find us at darthsandroids.net and metacotta.net for our more general weirdness.
Yeah, we should actually take this opportunity to give a plug to the other things we do. We've got something like 10 different webcomics all going at the same time.
The most long-running webcomic of all time?
Oh, yes. Metacotta itself, which has an archive going back some...
billions of years.
40 billions of years. Mezzacotta. It's on mezzacotta.net, mezzacota.net. This is a website where we put our half-baked ideas, and we've got a lot of them. Mezzacotta, the comic itself, is one, and there are other comics on there. Eavesdropper, the one that Andrew mentioned a few times already, is one that he's writing and I'm illustrating with actual drawings. That's on there. I did a Star Trek webcomic called Planet of Hats, which recaps every episode of the original series of Star Trek. That's now completed. I started that as an exercise to actually teach myself to draw better, which is an ongoing challenge.
Yep.
And there's a few other things on there. We've got weird Garfield mashups and all sorts of stuff. It's all actually linked from the bottom of darthsandroids.net if you readers want to try exploring and clicking the links. So,
and if you're into puzzles, then we got puzzles. We are so into puzzles.
That sounds awesome. So there's not just Darths and Droids, but a whole world of interesting ideas and fun that you can explore by checking out Andrew and David and finding irregular comics. But I'll link to you guys all in the liner.
Yeah,
lovely.
Okay. Well, thank you for the invitation. It's been a great chat, and we'd love to come back sometime later.
Yes. Thank you. So this has been What the Fandom, webcomics with Darths and Droids. And thank you very much for listening. Take care.